Now on to our keynote speaker, Matthew Bowler, a man with many hats. He is a partner in both Mandala Agency and Stafford's Reserve Bourbon. Tonight, he will share stories of companies and founders that he has worked with to illustrate the steps necessary to build a world-class, dominant brand. This is information we can all use. Matthew, welcome to the PubTalk stage. And Matthew, forgive us, the microphones are just a bit sticky, but it's low sugar, so not too sticky.
There you are.
Thank you. Can everyone?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Matthew. I've lived in Central Oregon for 25 years. Took me 5 countries to get here, and I'm so happy that Central Oregon and Bend is my home. In the title to my keynote tonight, I referenced the somewhat unsavory event of getting fired. And if I can see from a raise of hands, how many people in the room have had the experience of being fired at some point in their career? And keep your hand raised if getting fired was a good thing. I've been fired, I don't even know how many times. It's a lot. The first time I was fired, I was 12 years old. I was picking strawberries with 2 of my friends, and the farmer must have driven by the field and seen us eating and throwing the strawberries rather than picking and collecting them. So at the end of our shift, he came over, he said, "Don't come back." The beautiful thing about getting fired is it changes the framework of opportunity. Everyone who holds a W-2 position, everyone who's not a founder, everyone who isn't running their own company is in a situation where there's a very real opportunity cost to entrepreneurialism. When you get fired, that core basis is gone, and you can approach that as an opportunity, or you can approach that as a situation where you're fear-based. And I think as you spend time around entrepreneurs, you'll see this deep embrace of opportunity. And that's part of what I want to talk about tonight. As Shannon indicated, I own a marketing agency. That's my primary business. I've owned a number of other companies along that journey. One of which is Stafford's Reserve Bourbon, and I'm going to talk about Stafford's Reserve today, and I'm going to use the company and its brand as an illustration of the power of marketing and some of the steps that you can take. One of the things that's important is this idea of framing. So I'm going to give you a little bit of context about what I do so that you can understand the place from which I come. Mandala is 43 years old, founded in Bend, one of the first, if not the first, agencies in town. We have 6 full-time employees in Bend today. We are a dispersed enterprise. We've got another 25 full-time equivalent employees throughout the United States and Asia. And then in our sister company on the event business side, we have another 10 part-time employees. So within the universe of folks that I work with, we're somewhere in the region of 40 to 50 people. And the dispersed business environment brings you tremendous opportunity to do things that you couldn't do when I first came to town. So the position from which I talk today is one in which my advertising agency is working with some pretty decent-sized companies, both locally and around the country. Going back to getting fired, there's a couple of gentlemen in the room who fired me. Mike Wallenfels. Mike was the head of... I'm picking on you, Mike. It hurt. When it happened, it hurt. So Mike was in charge of sales and marketing for Mountain Hardware. And we had about a 12-year run with Mountain Hardwear until they were acquired by Columbia. And as so often happens in our business, the acquisition leads to a change in leadership, and a change in leadership leads to a change in partner. So one of the things that you should think about in business is architecting relationships with a willful end. The reason that we were let go by Mountain Hardwear is because they'd exited to Columbia. And our job, in partnership with Mike and his team, and you guys were fantastic, built a fabulous company, our job was to help you be as successful as possible, as fast as we could, within the parameters of the business they were building. So at the end of the day, that's really what I do for a living. So I get fired a lot. But the net result is good, because it always brings you to a point of opportunity. And I want to talk a little bit about the idea of a sandbox. It's something that I saw in working with a gentleman called Mike Lazaro. If you look him up, you'll see that he's exited 8+ companies. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's probably pretty close. So the idea of a sandbox is to take a business opportunity and play with it. And that's Stafford's Reserve. John Stafford and I have been really good friends for 25 years. We played rugby together. John's at the back of the room. If you turn around and look at him, you'll understand why I stopped playing rugby. He is a brick house of a human being. You get hit by that one too many times and you'll stop doing whatever it was you were doing. We took a look at the spirits business. I was working with Wild Roots at the time, and Wild Roots, I don't know if you're familiar with the company, they also own Wild Canna. Wild Canna is the #1 gummy brand, cannabis gummy brand in the United States. And Wild Roots is a vodka-based liquor brand. So we were working with the founder of Wild Roots, and Wild Roots was experiencing explosive growth. So John and I did some research on the category and came to discover that as marijuana was becoming legal around the country, beer was getting hit. Remember Deschutes was going to open a brewery on the East Coast and they pulled back? Well, the revenues weren't there because their sales were going down, and the sales were going down in the beer category. Spirits was growing. But the segment that was growing the fastest was craft spirits. Small batch, local distribution, great story. Craft spirits was where the growth opportunity was, and still is. Growth in craft spirits brands is where craft beer was 15 years ago, and the rate of growth is paralleling that experience. You go back into the bar tonight, you'll see a mix of Diageo-style brands, right? Jim Beams, so on and so forth, Grey Goose, and then you'll start to see the craft brands appearing. That's what's happening in the market. That segment is growing really, really fast. So we decided that we wanted to open a distillery, but we knew nothing about distilling alcohol. So instead of doing that, we decided to start a distribution company. And we wanted to do it inside this sandbox of opportunity. We could see a market growth potential. We didn't know enough about the business, so we decided to start a company to learn about the business. So we started a distribution company. We put $1,000 in each, and we started to attract distillery partners to us. We netted out at 30. Each distillery was paying us about $1,000 a month. And what did we do for them? We went out and we built a national distribution network. And in the process of building the national distribution network, we self-educated on how we could be most successful in the spirits business. We knew the segment was growing, but we didn't know the formula for success. What product should we bring to market? What price point? Where should we source it? Is distillation ourselves the best route? Should we go down a wholesale route? How does one structure this company? So we use the distribution company to conduct our market research to understand the opportunity. And as I said, in the process, we built a national distribution network. And then when we were ready, we made the step of introducing our own product. We shut down the distribution partnerships for a number of cost of ownership reasons. The brands we were working with were relatively small. And there was a lot of time and effort necessary in order to nurture those relationships. And the profit was good, but we weren't really offsetting the investment from the brand. So the fundamentals of the business weren't great. And we saw an opportunity, as I say, to move forward with the Stafford's Reserve brand. Now, another marketing fundamental is positioning. We have definitively positioned the Stafford's Reserve brand in line with other whiskey brands that have exited in the $100 million range. Specifically, High West is an example out of Utah. And then you guys are probably familiar with Pendleton, which is actually a whiskey you should never drink. You should only drink Stafford's Reserve because Pendleton's Canadian. Come on. But they followed a similar business model to ours. They source their whiskey out of Canada. They sell it at an affordable price. They built their market, and then they sold that company to Constellation for $100 million. In the Stafford's Reserve equation, what we've done is we've architected a brand, and there's a bottle here, that's intended to play in the same arena. And what I mean by that is it's priced and packaged to be competitive at the same level that both of those brands are that I just described to you. Now, if you take a look at High West, since they sold, they got quite exotic, and they went upmarket in a big way, which is a definitive opportunity, and it's a path that we're currently going down. So we have a base level product, we have a barrel-aged product that has a significantly higher margin on it, and we're in the process of introducing a 5-year barrel-aged bourbon that will also sell for a premium. The important piece in our strategy here is that we're introducing adjacent products, but we're not introducing brand extensions. We're going to be limited in every single release, and we do that deliberately because we want to be single-mindedly focused on the success of the Stafford's Reserve brand. Because if we're successful in building that brand and establishing broad distribution, then we can realize that single-focused return. What you see a lot in our industry is a lot of companies. It's very, very easy if you're producing bourbon. It's very easy to release vodka. It's very easy to release gin. It's very easy in your business to kind of go down the line and do lots of flavors. Anyone who owns a company that's got a lot of SKUs understands how complicated that becomes. So rather than being semi-successful in a small number of brands, or a larger number of brands, I should say, we're looking to be significantly successful with a small number of brands. We're starting with bourbon. As I said, we're doing some adjacency investigation around various levels of alcohol content. Barrel-aged is simply non-watered down at 116 proof. It doesn't cost us anything to produce that product. In fact, it's easier, financially more efficient, and the margin is 3x what we realize on our regular go-to-market product. The aged bourbon is a strategy that we're starting to deploy where we're going to do limited release, and we're doing it in partnership initially with corporations. So folks that John and I know in business who have an interest in investing with us in a private label bourbon product. Through that mechanism, we're able to offset the raw good cost of the bourbon that we're going to deploy inside our brand through the profit in the partnerships that we make with each company that we bring in. They get a private label whiskey. We hand carry them to the point of sale all the way through the TTB process. We carry enough profit to offset our investment in the aged product that we bring out at a premium price and with a lower volume of availability. Similar, if you will, to what a company like Supreme might do in the clothing arena, where they drop a product, they sell out overnight, they don't have to worry about repeat inventory and those sorts of things because their strategy is to always be introducing something new and different. There are a couple of bourbon brands that are well down the path out in front of us for sure that are doing this really, really well. So the strategy there, as I say, is to adopt an adjacent product path versus an extension, because in our opinion, extension is dilutive. And our ultimate objective is to build the stature of the Stafford's Reserve brand so that it becomes that powerful agent in the market. We are also contemplating, we're in the research phases and going down the path of introducing a tequila And we are going to be a house of brands and not a branded house. Branded house would be Virgin. Everything that Virgin does is Virgin. Virgin Galactic, Virgin Money, Virgin Airlines, so on and so forth. So the entire house is unified by the same brand. The approach that we're going to take is a house of brands where each individual brand stands on its own. If you take a look at Diageo, which is one of the largest spirits distributors in the world, they maintain a portfolio of individual brands that are very successful in whatever category they care about, whether it's tequila, whiskey, gin, vodka, etc. You wouldn't know as a consumer that they were aligned at an ownership level. You just know that each individual brand is in and of itself an outstanding product. So when we step to tequila, it will have no direct relationship at all to Stafford's. It will come out in a completely separate branding and completely separate name. Laddering up into Great Western Spirits, which is our DBA for the work that we're doing in the spirits industry. The bottom line for us in everything that we do is to be fastidiously maniacal about our actions. The first company that I worked for straight out of college was Porsche. And if you go to a Porsche dealership or a Porsche factory, you'll never ever see their brand on the floor. You'll never ever see their brand on a pen. They are fastidious about what they do with their visual expression of their company. And in the path to building a world-class brand, this is something that my father said, and it stuck with me for many years. Absolutely everything that you do is important. Everything that you do with your brand is important. Where you put it, and more importantly than that, where you don't. So it's not just a question of where do you articulate your brand, but where do you choose not to articulate it? You'll never walk on a Porsche logo. Hands down, they won't let you do it because the brand is worth so much to them that they don't want to denigrate it by putting it on a rug as you walk into a facility at a dealership or in their manufacturing facilities in Stuttgart. And when you take that philosophy of maniacal attention to detail in the brand that you're building, what you will find is that you will build lasting and enduring value over time. And it's the brands that you trust and the brands that you like that you actively seek and anticipate what they're doing next. Easy example, Apple, right? End of the summer, September comes around, they plow out their new line of products. But the number of people who go online to watch that release is testament to the power of the brand. The product may not be as revolutionary as the iPhone was when it came out, but the affinity for what they promise the market is incredibly powerful. And the beautiful part of this is if you do it right, is you can protect margin inside a brand because the consumer has preference for what you're selling. If you establish that position, then people will pay up for the product that you're selling. They'll always want the best price. If you drive a Mercedes, chances are you didn't pay a premium price for it. Chances are you went to the dealership and you negotiated something that worked for you. But the brand, when created well, is accretive. And it gives you the opportunity to explore markets that you weren't able to explore previously. And in the right market circumstances, it gives you the opportunity to extract a premium from the market because of that affinity and repeat purchase behavior. In the world of marketing, things have changed. Good Lord. ChatGPT and what we're seeing in the AI arena is truly fascinating. But there's one thing that I would ask you guys to think about and hold on to in the arsenal of brand marketing. And that is the power of truth. In the last business cycle and a half, I think it's fair to say that we've seen a pretty solid attrition on what truth is. And truth is incredibly powerful because people want it. They feel comforted by fact versus fiction. And folks are trying to understand what something really, really represents and what it really stands for. So historically, when we articulated work for companies, when we articulated work for Stafford's, truth was a given. there was an expectation that the truthful position was the one people would represent. Well, that expectation's not there anymore. And if you can own it in your business category, if you can own the established position of truth, it can have a very powerful multiplying effect in the work that you're doing. So from the work that we do with Staffords, we are deliberately authentic in everything that we do. We're deliberately authentic in everything that we articulate. From the sourcing of the bourbon, the people that we choose to partner with, the events and distributors that we align our brand with, the entire continuum is important in bringing the product to market. When we consider the future of our company, we're in a slightly different place, I think, to many of the folks that come up and talk. We're not raising any money. Raising money is actually, I don't think, very difficult. I think the opportunity to raise money is there all the time. The question isn't so much how much money can you raise, the question is what do you want to do with it? And from our perspective, and you've heard me talk about $100 million exits, and that'd be nice. But from my perspective, and from John's perspective, we're interested in building generational wealth for our families. So we're interested in growing a company that stands for something. We're interested in growing a company that means something. And we're interested in creating generational wealth in an environment where more often than not, you exit and the wealth that you create within a generation or two very rarely spans more than 4 generations, is gone. It's easy to spend and hard to make, right? So our business philosophy, our business objective is to build a company and hold it. I think that's true of basically all the companies that I've been involved in. I'm happy to open the floor to any questions. We have samples available in the hallway outside if you didn't get one on your way in. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can give us an example of a marketing effort that you made for Stafford's Reserve that was maybe something unusual or that you tried that worked really well or didn't work well.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Your choice.
So when we first came to market, we felt that there was a disconnect between the traditional way in which spirits are presented. Oftentimes they're presented at room temperature, and oftentimes they're presented in the absence of any sort of mix and in the absence of food. So when we present Staffords, we always present in a cocktail as an option. So tonight we're serving straight over ice, a Manhattan or an old fashioned. And normally we align our brand experience with a catered event. So you're at a party. We have an event company that span out of what we were doing via market introduction and activation in California and New York, called Crafted Life, and you'll see us around in Bend a lot, and we work with the folks at EDCO a lot. Crafted Life aligns our spirits with a party-like experience, and we obsess on ensuring that the food is really good. So when you leave a crafted party, not necessarily what you'd see today or at an EDCO event, but the more curated events that we do, we're integrating that experience so that when you step away, you had a comprehensively good time. And we're not actively selling Staffords. We don't sit there and present as though it were a tasting. We're employing professional bartenders to present an experience. And in that process, if you gravitate towards whiskey as a drink, then we are going to tell you the story. And the strategy started, first we did it at Pronghorn. We partnered with the bar team. So John and I started out as bartenders in this enterprise. We competed against the bar team at Pronghorn. We provided spirits to Kevin, the executive chef. He did a spirit-infused dinner. We hosted a cocktail party for free, and then folks went into the restaurant for dinner. We took that model to San Francisco. We connected with a company called the Supper Club out of Los Angeles, and we're now actively involved in partnering on events. The Supper Club's a private dining club in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, New York, Dallas, and we partner with them in their activation events. And the nice thing is that they're trying to attract fine diners who want to have a good party. So they're bringing the influencers to the event. They're bringing restaurants and bar owners because that's part of their go-to-market strategy. So we're aligned in that manner from within this initial sandbox of how do we introduce people to the spirits that we represent. So we ideated around a more inclusive experience, and then we created it, and then we scaled it.
So beautiful. Okay, I have another question for you because you've obviously been in marketing for such a long time, and I have a feeling I'm not the only person with this question. But the rise of influencer culture, what has that been like for you?
So any brand is looking for scale and efficiency to deliver its message to its market. And the influencer channel it's a good one because there's not a lot of friction if you choose the right influencers. The challenge, however, is to deliver scale. So personally, I think that public relations is a much more powerful channel than influencer marketing because most influencers don't really have the scale. If you look at the data around engagement, most often they're not actually connecting with a large enough audience. Sure, you get David Beckham to open up a Hague whiskey bar in Miami all day long, but most people are not David Beckham.
Right, and there's some questions, I think, around how people get their followers and if it's legitimate engagement, and yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, any other questions from the crowd tonight? Yes. Hi, Roger. So thank you for being here and speaking tonight, and for the long-standing relationship that you've had with the community. And can you tell us a little bit about EDCO's brand?
Yeah, no, definitely. So as Roger knows, my father was on the board of directors at EDCO, gosh, probably 20 years ago. And my father had a pretty storied corporate career, both in automotive manufacturing, and then he ran a couple of really, really big advertising agencies in his day. The EDCO brand was something that Roger and the marketing team at EDCO asked us to help them with. And in anything that we do in marketing, understanding your audience and articulating, we call it planning. And planning is essentially when you articulate the way you want your market to feel and the way you want your market to act when they experience whatever that communication is. So in the case of the EDCO brand, we were looking to articulate a position where the entity was naturally accretive to people of business influence. So if I am in a leadership position in business in Central Oregon, the way the EDCO brand was created in its art direction and its style was intended to make it feel like it was something that you should have as a part of your life. This is an entity that I want to be a part of. So the challenge there is that you need to create that natural magnetism, the gravity, if you will, that pulls people to it without really knowing why. And if you're successful in doing that, then it becomes a must partner with entity for business leaders. Now, I don't know, Roger, did we do a good job?
I'll say we did in more ways than one. Oh, I love that story. Any other questions? Yes.
A couple of things that you mentioned that are very intriguing. You mentioned the hunger for truth-based marketing, and I would be curious as to examples of that you've seen, and I'm also curious as to what you're identifying as your target market.
For Stafford's Reserve? Yeah, okay, great question. He's looking for some examples of the truth-based marketing and then also for Stafford Reserve.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a great question because it's very, very difficult. You get the truth bit wrong and you're in real trouble really, really fast.
Yeah, forever.
Because, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sentiment and mistrust. So a year ago, we started working with Taos Ski Valley. Taos Ski Valley is the first ski resort in the country to earn a B Corp certification, which is DEI, a commitment to the planet, a reinvestment in community, so on and so forth. And we went through the typical remote discovery process, had a chat with the marketing director on the phone, and I said, listen, I've got to come meet you, because it's not that I don't believe you, but I don't believe you, right? So I went down to Taos, and I met with the marketing director, and I met with the operations folks, and I looked at what they were doing with water, and I looked what they were doing with alternative energy, and I looked what they were doing with a memorandum of commitment to the folks in the Pueblo, and I looked what they were doing with ensuring that women were paid exactly the same as men, and a manager of the parking lot got paid as much as a marketing manager. So I went down there to see it, because most often you're dealing with greenwash, right? The campaign that we launched carries the tagline "For the Good," and the human truth that we were driving at in our audience segmentation was this sense that our leadership has lost its way when it comes to the environment, when it comes to people, when it comes to things that we care about. You look at the data, it'll tell you that most people don't like the idea of semi-automatic weapons running around, right? But as a country, we can't overcome the NRA to vote that out as something that's illegal. But the sentiment is there that climate change is bad. The sentiment is there that we should be fair to people. The sentiment is there. So For the Good was intended to reflect the human truth of how people feel back onto the audience from the perspective of a ski resort. And this, a week ago maybe, Taos Ski Valley, terrible snow year, by the way. I mean, terrible, was just recognized as the #1 ski resort in the country by Outside Magazine. And it's not because their skiing is great. You should go there. But the snow wasn't good. But what they do for the planet and their commitment to community is unparalleled by anyone else in that industry. So if you are able to uncover the truth, which was their commitment, and if you're able to reflect it to the market in a way that they feel is authentic, then you can empower that concept.
That's beautiful. And then identifying your market for Stafford Reserve, right? Your target audience, yeah?
Yeah. So some brands lead, some brands follow. Stafford's Reserve is a following brand. We're not category creative. We're not disruptive. We're not doing something that other people aren't doing. What we're looking to be is we're looking to be an artisanal bourbon that replaces the bourbon that you're buying that is like mass-produced, right? When you're a follower brand, what you need to do is you need to articulate your positioning in a way that feels comfortable to the audience, but differentiates you in a way that's interesting. So imagine you like to eat ice cream, and I'm selling you ice cream. It's way easier for me to sell ice cream to someone who eats ice cream already. So Stafford's Reserve is specifically intended to align with consumer behavior around that product's bourbon. But then where we win, price, packaging, story. If we're successful in establishing a point of belief with our audience around those three things, then we will prevail and we'll be successful.
Okay, and then, yes? What's the target price for consumers? What's your retail price?
Great question. So the spirits business is really complex. Our tax in Oregon is 100%. So we're in the store at $34, $33.95, right? Half of that is tax. So we're going to market at plus minus $16, $17. And our margins are good. They're good.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry, but in California, at All-Star, which we perceive to be a king-making liquor store, we're $20, $19.99.
Oh, wow.
So
huge choice. Yeah, huge change.
It varies by market. In that particular instance, All-Star is the highest grossing liquor store in the state of California. There is not another liquor store in the state that sells more alcohol than they do.
That's really a statement.
Uh-huh.
That's really a statement, Matthew. I believe you had a question.
Yeah, just keeping with Mike Longfellow's career arc.
Can you we want to stay on theme with Mike Malafelt. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you did on the Hydro Flask campaign? Great question.
Right. So Scott didn't actually fire me because Scott didn't actually hire me. So I mean,
Loophole.
yeah, Lou. You know, honestly, can I be honest? It
Yes.
really did feel like I was fired. It was hard. Not gonna lie. When we were working with Travis, who founded, I forget his last name, Travis founded Hydro Flask. And he did so when he was in Hawaii. And he was a private jet pilot, and he'd been in Bend before, and he had sold fences. He was a commercial fence guy. I'm not sure what the right word is for that, but that's what he did. Then he went to Florida and flew jets. Then he went to Hawaii. And he was on the beach in Hawaii, and he had a Nalgene, and the Nalgene was sweating. And it was kind of gross. And I think this was about the time that BPA released, so cancer release, if you heat up the plastic, bad deal. So the genius moment that Travis had was, what I really need is a thermos. A thermos would be great, but thermoses aren't cool. A thermos does what it's supposed to do, keeps cold things cold and hot things hot, but I don't want to bring it to the beach. So what Travis did is he took the bottle concept, Nalgene-esque, although his initial bottles were thinner, and he went over to China and he worked out how to make it. And then he powder coated it and those sorts of things. And the original logo was this really terrible looking wave. I don't know if you remember that. That was the original Hydro Flask. So when we worked with Travis, this was at a time when Life is Good was a growing brand, and basically a T-shirt brand, right? They don't really have any IP on product, but Life is Good was doing really well. Crumpler, I don't know if you're familiar with the Crumpler messenger bag from Australia. Crumpler was doing really well. Sanook, similar deal, doing really well with that inexpensive sandal-type shoe. And if you look at the connectivity between those brands, which were on point in the psyche of the market at the time, they were very engaging and playful. You also saw it with Smartwool back in the day. They had the sheep that bounced around the website that was really kind of cool and playful. So when we created the Hydro Flask brand, we were looking to nestle it in that arena in a way that when you saw it, right, when you saw it, in that sense, it made you feel happy. And think about what Hydro Flask was doing at the time. 5% give back. And they put a number on the bottom of the flask, I don't know if you remember, and you punch the number in on the website, and you could choose where the money went. So 1% for the planet was a thing, and they went to 5. Great. Challenger brands can do that because they don't have any money yet. So, right? They don't have a lot to lose. So they were articulating that sort of standout strategy. But in the development work we did, we wanted people to feel happy because the research and the data, even today, it's very difficult to sell someone something that costs more money on a Save the Planet message. People like it, but they don't necessarily want to pay for it. Right. And Hydro Flask was stop using plastic, don't use Nalgene, save the planet, so on and so forth. And what we chose to do was articulate the brand in a way that made it feel accretive in a happy, feel-good sense. I think Patagonia does the same thing. I think people wear the Patagonia brand because it reflects back to other people their viewpoint on the planet. And there's scores and scores of brands that do that. So that was the arena that we worked in. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if Travis was telling us the truth, but he saw 4x growth when he moved from the Wave to the Hydro Flask logo that you guys are familiar with today. And he was at the stage, right, where he was selling out of the back of his car. When Scott came in and they had lots of money, that's when they fired us.
It's interesting that you bring up Patagonia. When you were talking about the truth-based marketing, I immediately thought of them. Yeah,
I mean, there's a statement that we'll make inside the firm. What would Patagonia do, right?
I love that.
Black Friday comes around and they're like, no one works.
Shut it down.
Right? Shut it down. Day for the planet. You're like, that's freaking genius.
Yeah, their contribution to the culture is significant and meaningful and
Right. Their statement on anti-racism.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So this is great. This is actually brilliant.
Yeah.
So, and we came up against this with Taos Ski Valley. The image that we wanted to lead the campaign with is a boy from the Pueblo who is on a scholarship to learn how to ski. And this boy is beautiful, and he has long hair, and he looks like a girl. But he's just the most gorgeous child, and he's got his goggles on and his helmet, and he's, you know when kids go skiing, you know how happy they are? Well, that's just coming out of every pore, right? So we were going to launch with national print and outdoor and those sorts of things. And the headline that we led with is, "You can see a better world from here." And then the photograph of the skier and the logo and "for the good," right? The client wouldn't do it. And the client wouldn't do it because they were afraid. And they were afraid because they didn't want to be perceived as though they were co-opting the child. Now, the child knew they were being photographed. The parents had signed a release. It wasn't disingenuous. He was part of a foundation event that Taos funded, and they've been teaching children to ski now for years at a fraction of the regular cost. So there's nothing disingenuous about what they're doing. But there's a very real fear to own that space. So what did Patagonia do when there was a sentiment around racism and we need to be consciously anti-racist? Well, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't think I'm a racist person, right? And I don't know what anti-racism is. And I don't know that a lot of people do. And if you look at what Patagonia articulated, that's what they said. They said, as an institution, we don't tolerate. As an institution, we don't perceive that this is a part of our culture, but we need to do more. We don't necessarily know what it is that we need to do, but we're committed to doing it. And we're going to get it wrong, and it's a journey. So the beauty of that statement is its honesty and its truth. So depending upon what motivates your market, those opportunities exist. You have to embrace the risk. And I kind of go back to, who's been fired? No one likes to be fired. But once you've been fired, it's incredibly freeing because everything in front of you is opportunity. And when I talk about a sandbox, when John and I started, we didn't know what we were going to do. But we weren't childish about it. We built a successful distribution company. We made a bunch of money. We just knew that wasn't the business we wanted to be in. And we discovered our path with a private label bourbon, which we think we can be very successful with, right? So you have to put yourself in that arena where opportunity can give you an outcome that is significantly larger than you might expect.
Well, I really appreciate it because you're also showing others how to do the same, and that's what we're doing right now. So I really appreciate that. Okay, I think we can do one more question. I could talk about this all night, but I'd rather listen to Matthew talk about it. Do I have any other questions? Okay, maybe we...
I think they
Oh, yeah, we do have one more. Okay.
The most fun I ever had doing EDCO events was with his dad doing joint presentation at the EDCO.
He says the most fun he ever had doing EDCO events. I'm not going to take this personally, but he said the most fun he had doing EDCO events was when he was working with your dad.
Have you done a lot of events with Wes?
With
Wes?
No.
Oh, well, then don't feel bad.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you're wonderful. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, Matthew, before you go, I do have something for you, and I think you're going to be really thrilled because it's our tradition to give away the Stein. And look, yours has a bonus. It has a shotgunned Palmies, which feels appropriate. So we'll rinse it out for you, and you bring it back, and we'll fill it up with whatever you want.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matthew.